Does China lack good Samaritans? Well, yes. Yes, it certainly does. But it's complicated. And it's very difficult to look at it from a Western lens. I'm going to talk about this because, well, people wonder why I make videos about certain topics. I'll tell you why, because they reflect what goes on in my life. And when something happens in my life, I talk about it. And so something that happened a week ago when I was filming my video about how Chinese people are friendly has brought this topic to the forefront. So I stopped the fight at McDonald's. And I have to set the scene and explain to you how this ties into the whole Good Samaritan thing. Okay, now I was doing my Chinese people are super friendly episode. So I went to Dongmen. I love going to Dongmen. There's always crowds, there's always people. It's a perfect place to go and meet random, just random Chinese people. And the nice thing is it's kind of touristy for Chinese people. So you get, people from all over China there who come to Shenzhen and they want to go shopping and stuff. So you get a very broad spectrum. It's not just local Shenzhen people, right? Anyway, so I'm there and I'm busy shooting the introduction, where I want to say, I think Chinese people are super friendly and I'll prove it to you.
Hey there,
that
guys.
Kind of nonsense.
So, China absolutely
While I was
loves me
sitting
and I'm
at
going
the
to prove it to
table, a
you.
fight broke out a few tables down. But it had been kind of boiling over for a while. Like basically when I got up there, I noticed there was a table where I'd say, I can't remember if it's 4 or 5 people, but there were basically these two sort of bigger, older guys picking on a younger, smaller guy. And I hate bullying, by the way, but they were just kind of talking harshly to the guy and occasionally sort of pointing fingers and shouting at him. So I just kind of let it be because I didn't want to get involved. It's not my fight. Who knows? It could be like a family thing or, you never know. Anyway, so I'm sitting there and we're busy recording this intro, and all of a sudden these two bigger guys start beating the hell out of this younger guy, like actually start physically pounding him. And I immediately, just instinctually, because I don't put up with this kind of crap, right? But I'm going to, this is complicated, I'm going to have to explain to you in detail, but anyway. I hopped up, I immediately shouted at them, ran over, shouted in Chinese, this is not the place to fight. If you want to fight, get the hell out of here. And immediately they stopped. They stopped beating the guy up. The one guy apologized to me. The other guy kept pointing his finger and shouting at the guy that he was beating up, but he stopped beating him up. And then, about a minute later, they all left. And they left the guy that they were beating up sitting by himself at the table. So I stopped the fight, and it would have continued if I hadn't gotten up and gone over and talked to them. And this is where the Good Samaritan thing comes in, right? The place was packed. There were tables of all different demographics sitting around this table, which you can see in the footage. There was a group of schoolgirls who later they were obviously impressed, came over and wanted to take photos with me. And you would have seen that in the intro to the last video. That's how they came up and approached me. Nice group of girls. I don't blame them. I mean, schoolgirls aren't going to stand up and stop a fight, right? But there were people my age, older, younger, you name it, different kinds of people, all around, and not a single person said a word or lifted a finger, anything like that. Oh, look, we have another little accident here. Lovely. Yeah. Anyway, let's get back to it. So nobody lifted a finger, and it's upsetting, It's something that I've witnessed here in China a lot. Whenever somebody's in need, like if someone gets injured or falls down or, faints or anything like that, people will actively avoid them. Nobody wants to step in to help. And there have been some very, very high profile cases. Here in Shenzhen, a woman fainted in the subway station and people actively stepped around her for a really long time until she died. She could have been saved, but because nobody stepped in to help, she actually died. They changed some rules in the metro after that. The footage I showed you in the beginning of the foreigner fainting in the subway in Shanghai, he passed out, everyone just ran out of there. And, he kind of regained consciousness. I've got a friend here who was walking and had heat stroke or something and fainted in Huajian Bay and literally was there lying in the sun for, I don't know, as long as it took for her to wake up again. and nobody helped. And there are quite a few reasons for this. I mean, there are even worse stories of, children being hit by cars and just being left there and nobody wants to approach them. And, for a foreigner like myself, and probably you as well, you're probably thinking, this is ridiculous, right? This is awful, 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 abhorrent behavior. Why are people's morals so corrupt? Well, let's get to it and explain it. So why are Chinese people seemingly so afraid to help their fellow man? Well, first of all, I'm going to have to dispel that because it's not true. Chinese people are very, very willing to help their fellow man in need, but as long as it's not something that's going to get them into a lot of trouble or cause them a lot of trouble. Bear with me here, because I'm going to have to explain some of my own experiences. Every year here in China, at least for many years now, I've been doing these epic sort of motorcycle adventures through the rural parts of China. And yeah, I've been all over the place. This is another reason why when people think, well, a lot of people comment in my videos and say, you don't know China, you only live in Shenzhen. It's not true, because I've seen a lot of China, especially by motorcycle. I've been to all these rural areas. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that. What I wanted to say, the reason I'm mentioning that is there've been plenty of times that I've gotten lost in the past before I had GPSs, years ago. Plenty of times I've broken down, been stuck somewhere in the middle of the night, and local people have helped, and in a big way. I've had people offer me a place to stay. I've had friendly farmers sort of give me a place where I could camp. I've had people give me food off of their own tables, So I absolutely have had fantastic experiences with, Chinese people, strangers, really helping me when I was in need. But that being said, if there's a fight, if someone gets injured, if someone's life is in danger, don't expect help, because anything like that is just too much of a risk for the average Chinese person to take. And there are a few reasons for this. First reason is, in China, you're on your own, okay? You have your family, and your family's kind of the people you can rely on, but other than your family, you can't rely on anything. There are no systems in place like in the West. There are no Project Innocence or whatever you call it. Like, there's no sort of like court that you can go to like fight against false accusations and bad people who will try to drag you down. What I'm trying to say here is that people are afraid because if they get involved in any of these situations, and if they get caught up in a scam, it can absolutely ruin their lives. And it does absolutely ruin people's lives here. And there's no recourse. For instance, I'm a foreigner, right? So I can get away with intervening in that fight. Let's just say I got in there and I basically broke them up physically. Luckily, it didn't reach that point because they stopped when I confronted them. Let's say I had gotten into that fight and, physically pulled them apart, and the cops were called and there was all sorts of nonsense. Because I'm a foreigner, there would have been a bigger spotlight on the whole thing, and people would be able to pick apart, who's the guilty party very quickly, and I would probably not get into a lot of trouble. However, if a local person was involved and the police got called and everything like that, they would probably blame the intervening person, and he'd get into a lot of trouble and he'd have no recourse. He'd basically be forced to pay compensation or go to jail, or who knows what would happen, but it would be a huge burden to himself and his family, and no one would care. And that's the biggest problem, is that people's lives can be absolutely destroyed and turned on their heads by intervening and helping. And there's this other big thing called the broken vase scam, which I've done a video about, so I'm going to link to it. But basically what happens is people will injure themselves on purpose, and then if someone tries to help, they will blame the person who tried to help them. They'll kind of grab onto them and then say, it's you that injured me, and without any real proof, that person that gets blamed very often gets stuck with a bill of paying a lot of money, medical bills, and huge amounts of compensation. And this basically arises, the people that pull off these injury scams are usually people from the lost generation, the sort of older, middle-aged kind of evil uncles and evil aunties. Those are usually the culprits. And the reasoning for this is, I believe, a lot of them grew up in poverty. A lot of them grew up during that very sort of terrible political turmoil, which left a lot of people starving, and a lot of nonsense was going on during that time. Okay, and then all of a sudden China changes, and there's all this prosperity and wealth and money going around like you won't believe, and that generation was left out. They didn't ever really get to taste that. So they see all these young people driving fancy cars, you know, and they see people living these lavish lifestyles, and I guess they just want their piece of the pie. So it's usually those guys that are going out there, like old ladies falling down and blaming children so that the parents have to pay compensation. There are tons of stories. You can go read up on it. It's called the Broken Vase Scam. I'm linking my video. But this is the reason people don't want to intervene. It's not because they're not good people, but because they're incredibly afraid and scared that their lives are going to be ruined, and the lives of their family, you know, will be ruined as well if they intervene in something like this. So it's a tricky situation. How do you break out of this? What can you do? The Shenzhen government has, in fact, as early as 2013, I believe, implemented a Good Samaritan law. But once again, it's so difficult to prove in these situations, you know, what's going on. It's a difficult social situation, and it's going to take a hell of a long time for China to change this. Now, I'm going to leave you guys with a video, which I'm going to sit through and subtitle some of it for you. Just going to leave some of it, but basically the gist of it is some Chinese people are pissed off about this situation as well, all right? In fact, the average Chinese person hates it. It's terrible. It's like a blight on society over here. So a couple of young guys, they set up a social experiment. Now, oh man, do I hate social experiments and pranks and things like that. It's like, for me, that's the worst form of media you can get. It's like a prank show or a social experiment show. But they set up a social experiment where they took a woman out on the street and pretended to attack her and kidnap her and do all these things in front of, you know, just average citizens. And well, you'll see for yourself the reactions of the local people here. And because this is done by a group of Chinese people for Chinese media to show it, you know, how Chinese people react, you can't come and blame me saying I'm a bad foreigner trying to show Chinese is bad. This is a problem that everybody wants fixed. My Chinese friends want it fixed. All the Chinese people I know want it fixed. I want it fixed. Let's hope it gets fixed. I'm going to leave you on that, and I'm going to basically head through to this little social experiment video. Thanks for watching again, guys. I know it's not the most uplifting and lovely topic in the world, but you know, China has many, many positives that far do outweigh the negatives, and if we can get rid of these crappy situations like this, it'll be the best place in the world. Now that guy at the end who finally stood up, that guy honestly deserves a medal. He is China's most awesome young man and basically gives hope. So I hope more and more people start to behave as well as he did and actually step up when they're needed. So I'd like to just leave this on a positive message or positive note and say that I seriously appreciate that guy. Whoever you are, you should be proud of yourself. And I can't wait to see all of you guys in the next video. So until next time, you know the drill. Stay awesome.